The sun was
Oh
burning hot when
my
Jed Mitchell arrived
God.
at the old auction grounds. His pickup truck was dusty and tired, just like him. The radio had stopped working 3 months ago, but Jed did not fix it. He had nothing left to listen to anyway. Jed was a tall man, but time had bent his back. His face was brown and cracked like old leather. His hands were scarred from 63 years of hard work. His eyes were gray and empty, the color of a sky after a storm has passed. The auction grounds sat on the edge of town, where nobody wanted to go. It was a place of broken dreams and last chances. Old fences fell apart. Dust covered everything. The wind carried the smell of animals and failure. Jed drove slowly through the gates. He parked his truck far from the other vehicles. He did not want to talk to anyone. Talking meant answering questions. Questions meant telling the truth about how empty everything had become. His wife, Maria, had died 3 years ago. She died in the spring, during the season when flowers grew and horses had new babies. Jed remembered standing in the hospital, holding her hand, feeling her warmth fade like a sunset. After she was gone, the whole world looked gray to him. Even the flowers stopped being beautiful. His son, Tommy, had left 2 years after that. He went to the city for a job in an office building. He said the ranch was dying. He said there was no future in raising horses anymore. He said his father was living in the past. They spoke on the phone twice a year now. The conversations were short and cold, so Jed was alone. The ranch had 200 acres of dry land. It had 10 tired horses that ate money every day. It had a barn that needed a new roof. It had a house too big and too quiet. The bank sent letters every month, asking for money Jed did not have. Today, Jed came to sell 2 of his mares. Maybe the money would pay the bank for 1 more month. Maybe it would buy feed for winter. Maybe it would buy time, though time was the one thing Jed was not sure he wanted anymore. He walked slowly to the auction ring. The morning sun is climbing higher. Everything was hot and dusty. The air smelled like animal, sweat, and wood. Other ranchers were already there, standing in groups, talking about prices and profit. They wore expensive hats and new boots. They talked loudly and laughed without meaning it. Jed stood alone at the fence. The auctioneer's voice was loud and fast, like a machine that never stopped. Horses came into the ring one after another. Good horses. Strong horses. Horses with papers and bloodlines and value. Rich men bought them. Poor men watched. 2 hours passed. Yet's mares sold for less money than he needed. He stood in the dust, holding a check that meant nothing. Then something changed. A gate at the back of the arena opened. A man came out holding a rope. On the other end of that rope was not a horse. It was something wild. Something broken. Something that looked like it wanted to kill everyone in the world. The foal was young, maybe 6 months old. Its coat was dark chestnut, almost black in the hot sun. But the foal was not calm like other horses. This foal was a storm on 4 legs. It reared high on its back legs, pulling hard on the rope. The man holding the rope cursed and pulled harder. The foal's eyes were white with fear and anger. Its mouth opened, showing teeth. It made sounds that were not like normal horses' sounds, like an animal that had forgotten how to be tame. The other ranchers stepped back. They did not want to be near this horse. "What have we got here?" the auctioneer called. His voice was less excited now. "A wild one. A real wild one, folks. Young foal, maybe 6 months, strong animal. Who wants to start the bidding? $100? Anyone? Anyone?" Nobody raised their hand. The foal tried to kick the fence. It reared again. The man with the rope was getting tired. Sweat ran down his face. $50, the auctioneer called. He sounded desperate now. "I am asking $50 for this young foal. $50, going once, going twice." Jed did not know why he was standing up. He did not know why his arm was moving. He did not know why his voice was speaking, but his hand went up into the air. Everyone turned to look at him. The other ranchers stared. The auctioneer looked shocked. The man with the rope stopped pulling for a moment. "I have a bid," the auctioneer said. The old man in the back. $50 for the wild foal. Going once, going twice. Sold. It was done. Jed walked to the office and paid $40 for the horse. The man at the desk looked at him like he was crazy. Maybe he was. He was taking home a wild, broken, impossible thing that nobody wanted. He was taking home an animal that was scared and angry and dangerous. He was taking home something that cost money to feed and could never be sold. He had no money. The foal would not go into his trailer quietly. Jed had to call for help. 2 other men came and tied ropes around the young horse's body. They pushed and pulled until the foal was inside, still fighting, still scared, still wild. During the drive home, Jed could hear the foal kicking inside the trailer. Kick, kick. The sound was like a heartbeat. The sound was like someone saying no over and over again. Jed drove slowly down the dusty road. The sun was lower now. The sky was turning orange. He was driving toward an empty ranch with an empty barn to take care of an animal he could not afford. He was not sure what he had done. But something inside him, something that had been dead for 3 years, felt very small and very quiet and very alive. It was the smallest feeling, like a candle in a dark room. But it was there.
The foal would not eat. Jed opened the stall door and placed fresh oats in a metal bucket. He poured clean water into a wooden trough. He stood back and waited. The young horse stood in the corner, shaking, eyes wild and dark like a frightened child. The bucket sat untouched all day. When evening came, Jed removed the bucket. The water was still full. He tried again the next morning. Same thing. The foal would not eat. The foal would not drink. The foal would only stand in the corner, trembling, waiting for something terrible to happen. Jed was not angry. He had seen fear before. He had felt fear himself. He named the foal Storm. He never said the name out loud. Saying it felt like making a promise he was not sure he could keep. So he just thought it. Storm. 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 The name fit the wild eyes and the wild movements and the wild refusal to be calm. The first night, Jed did not sleep. He sat in a wooden chair outside the stall, watching. Storm paced back and forth, like an animal in a cage at the zoo. The hooves made a sound on the dirt floor. Clop, clop, clop. It was the sound of a prisoner walking in jail. Around midnight, the young horse tried to jump the fence. It reared up, pushing with all its strength. The fence was strong, but for a moment, Jed thought Storm might break through it anyway. The foal had that kind of desperate strength, the strength of something that would rather die than stay trapped. Jed did not move. He did not yell. He did not go inside. He just sat and watched and waited. By 3 a.m, Storm stopped trying to escape. The young horse stood in the middle of the stall, chest heaving, foam dripping from its mouth. It looked at Jed with eyes that were tired but still wild. Jed looked back. Neither one moved. The second day was the same. The oats stayed in the bucket. The water stayed in the trough. Storm refused everything. Jed began a routine. Every morning before sunrise, he woke up. He made black coffee in a small pot on the kitchen stove. He poured it into an old metal cup that his father had used 40 years ago. Then he walked to the barn. He would sit on a hay bale about 10 feet from the stall. He would drink his coffee slowly. He would not look directly at the foal. He would not make sudden movements. He would just be there. Sometimes he would look at the mountains in the distance. Sometimes he would watch the dust move in the light that came through the barn windows. Sometimes he would close his eyes and breathe, but he was always there. Storm watched him. The foal would see Jed sitting with the coffee cup. The young horse's ears would move forward, trying to understand what this old man was doing. Was he a threat? Was he waiting to hurt? Was he planning something? Days passed. 1 week, 2 weeks. On the 8th day, Jed noticed something different. When he arrived in the morning, the bucket of oats was not completely full. Some of it was gone. Not much, just a little, maybe a handful, but it was gone. Jed said nothing. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply poured new oats and fresh water. He sat on his hay bale with his coffee. He waited. Over the next week, the foal ate more. Still not much. Still not enough. But more. One morning, when Jed came with his coffee, Storm walked to the gate. The young horse did not run. It did not rear. It simply walked to where the old man sat and stopped. They were maybe 8 feet apart. The foal's breathing was calmer now. The wild rolling eyes had settled into a darker, more knowing gaze. Storm was still young and still scared. But something was changing. Jed sat very still. He raised his coffee cup slowly and took a sip. He did not look at the foal. He looked at the barn wall. He looked at the old wood and the shadows. He looked anywhere except at Storm. But he was aware of every breath the foal took. Minutes passed. Long minutes. The kind of minutes that feel like hours when you are holding your breath. Then Jed heard hooves move. Slowly. Carefully. Like someone walking through snow, trying not to make a sound. Storm was walking closer. The foal walked to the edge of the gate and stopped. The young horse's nose was now only 3 feet from Jed's body. Jed could feel the warmth coming from the animal. He could hear the soft breathing. Still, Jed did not move. The foal reached out its neck. Slowly, carefully, like it was moving toward something dangerous. The soft nose came closer. 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 Then it touched Jed's hand. Just for a second. Just a soft touch of warm hair and soft skin. Then Storm pulled back. But it had happened. Jed's eyes filled with water. Tears came down his weathered face, leaving marks in the dust and dirt. His hand trembled. His whole body trembled. He put down the coffee cup very slowly. He did not wipe his eyes. He did not move. He just sat there, a broken old man, crying in a barn because a wild young horse had finally decided to trust him. "It is okay," Jed whispered. His voice was very soft, like wind through dead leaves. "It is okay, Storm. You are safe now. You are home." The foal did not run away from these words. It did not fear the sound of his voice. Instead, Storm lowered its head and stood beside the old man, not touching, but close, close enough to feel each other, close enough to know that they were not alone anymore. Jed sat on that hay bale as the sun came up. The light moved across the barn floor. The dust floated in golden rays. And next to him stood a young horse that had learned to stop fighting. Neither of them moved for a long time. For the first time since his wife died, Jed Mitchell did not feel completely empty inside. The wild thing had come in from the cold. The wild thing was home. The months passed slowly, like seasons turning on an old wheel. Storm grew taller. The young foal's legs became longer and stronger. The dark chestnut coat became shinier and more beautiful. The wild eyes began to show something different, not wildness anymore, but intelligence, awareness, a kind of knowing that went deeper than fear. Jed trained the young horse the way he trained everything, with patience and silence. He did not use whips or chains. He did not force or demand. He simply showed Storm what needed to be done, and the foal learned. Within 4 months, Storm was following Jed around the ranch like a shadow. The young horse would walk beside him, would stand beside him when he fixed fences, would wait beside him when he sat on the porch at night. Something strange happened between them. It was not just the training. It was something deeper, something that had no name. Jed would wake up feeling sad about his wife, about his son, about everything lost. But then Storm would come to the barn door and put its head on Jed's shoulder. The young horse could not speak. But somehow, Storm always knew when Jed was breaking inside. By the time Storm was 1 year old, the foal had grown into something remarkable. Not just in size, though Storm was becoming a tall, muscular horse, but in something else. Something in the way it moved. Something in the way it understood the world. Jed had raised many horses in his 63 years. Good horses, strong horses, but never a horse like Storm. One afternoon in late summer, Jed decided to ride out to the canyon. It was a place where his grandfather used to take him when he was a boy. The canyon had red rock walls and a river at the bottom. Jed wanted to remember those days. He wanted to feel young again, if only for an hour. He saddled up his old mare, Buck. Buck was a good horse, 22 years old, faithful and calm. Jed had owned Buck since she was a foal. They understood each other without words. Storm walked beside them as they left the ranch. The young horse had never been on a real ride before, but Jed thought it was time. He thought it was time for Storm to see the world outside the fences. They rode through the grassland. The day was hot and bright. The sky was blue without any clouds. Everything was quiet except for the sound of hooves and the wind moving through the grass. When they reached the canyon, Jed stopped to rest. The river was running fast, faster than usual because of rain in the mountains. Jed tied Buck to a tree and sat on a rock, looking at the water. Storm wandered a little, exploring. The young horse had never seen a river before. The foal was curious, moving closer to the water's edge, sniffing, wondering. Jed was not worried. The bank was wide and safe. Then something went wrong. A rattlesnake, hiding in the rocks near the water, suddenly moved. It made that terrible sound, that warning rattle that means danger. Buck heard it first. The old mare panicked. Jed was not ready. He was still sitting on the rock, resting. By the time he understood what was happening, Buck had broken free from the tree. The rope had snapped. The old horse was running, wild with fear, running toward the canyon edge. The canyon dropped down 300 feet, just rocks and a river far below. Buck was running straight toward it. Buck! No! Buck! Jed screamed. He tried to run, but his old legs were too slow. He was too far away. There was nothing he could do, but something happened. Storm moved. The young horse did not think. The foal did not hesitate. Storm simply moved with a speed that Jed had never seen before. It was like watching lightning. It was like watching the wind take shape. Storm ran faster than Buck, much faster. The foal's legs stretched and powered. The young horse's body flew across the ground like it was made of pure speed. Jed watched, unable to breathe. Storm reached Buck just before the cliff edge. The foal did not slow down. Storm planted its body directly in front of the old mare, using its own strength to stop her. Buck crashed into Storm, and both horses fell to ground, tumbling in the dust. They stopped rolling 10 feet from the edge. Buck lay on her side, breathing hard, eyes wide with shock. Storm was on the ground too, but already moving, already standing up, already checking if the old mare was hurt. Jed ran as fast as his old body could run. His heart was exploding in his chest. When he reached them, he fell to his knees beside Buck. "Easy, girl. Easy," he whispered. "Easy now." Buck was alive. Her legs were shaking, but they were not broken. She had cuts from a fall, but nothing serious. She would be okay. Jed turned to Storm. The young horse stood perfectly still, breathing hard, eyes dark and intelligent. Storm looked at Jed as if to ask, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" "What did you just do?" Jed whispered. "What are you—" Storm had saved Buck's life. But more than that, Storm had moved with a speed and awareness that was not normal for a 1-year-old foal. Storm had known exactly what to do. Storm had understood the danger and acted without fear. No horse moved like that. Jed slowly stood up. He walked to Storm and placed his hands on the foal's neck. The young horse was sweating, but calm. The dark eyes looked back at Jed with something almost like understanding. "I do not know what you are," Jed said, "but you are not just a horse. You are something more." That night, Jed sat in his house, unable to sleep. He kept thinking about Storm's speed. He kept remembering how the foal had moved like nothing he had ever seen before. He went to the barn where old photographs were stored. Jed had not looked at these pictures in decades. They were too painful, too full of memories of better days. But now he opened the boxes. Photographs from 30 years ago. Pictures of horses and men. Pictures of his grandfather at rodeos, at races. Pictures of a horse, a beautiful, dark chestnut horse with eyes like fire. The horse's name was in the photograph. Thunder's Blood. champion quarter horse. 1965 to 1995, Jed's grandfather's horse. The greatest racing horse this land had ever seen. Dead for 30 years. Jed held the photograph with shaking hands. He looked at the horse in the picture. Then he looked out the barn window at Storm, standing in the moonlight, dark and strong and impossible. "No," Jed whispered. "That cannot be." But his heart knew the truth before his mind could accept it. Something extraordinary had come to his ranch. Something that had no explanation. Something that had been waiting, maybe for his whole life, to find him. The stranger arrived on a Tuesday morning when the sky was gray and the wind was cold. Jed was working on the fence in the south pasture when he saw the horse coming down the road. It was a beautiful animal, expensive looking, with a saddle that probably cost more than Jed's entire truck. The man on the horse was wearing a hat that looked like it had never seen dust. His clothes were clean. His boots were shiny. He did not belong here. Jed stood up and waited. The man rode slowly toward him, eyes scanning the ranch. When he saw Jed, he smiled, but the smile was not friendly. It was the smile of a hunter who has found what he is looking for. "Name is Richard Blackwood," the man said. He did not get off his horse. "I am looking for something, hoping you might help me." Jed said nothing. He had learned long ago that silence sometimes told you more than words. 2 years ago, Blackwood continued, a valuable horse was stolen from a breeding facility. A young foal, dark chestnut, maybe 6 months old at the time. Someone took her to hide her, probably dumped her at an auction somewhere to make her disappear. Jed's chest felt tight. He kept his face empty. "The foal was worth a lot of money then," Blackwood said. "Now, if she is alive and healthy, she would be worth even more, much more. I have been looking for that foal for 2 years. I have hired people. I have searched everywhere. Why would anyone steal a horse?" Jed asked quietly. Blackwood smiled again. "Because she is special. Because she comes from a bloodline that does not exist anymore. Because someone did not want her to be found." He pulled a piece of paper from his jacket, a photograph, old and worn from being carried. He held it down for Jed to see. It was the same photograph, the same horse from Jed's barn. Thunder's blood. "My great-grandfather raised this mare," Blackwood said. "She was a champion, the best racing horse ever born on this land. When she died, we thought that bloodline was gone forever. But before she died, she had one foal, one baby that was supposed to be hidden away, protected. The papers were lost in a fire many years ago. The foal disappeared into nothing." Jed's hands were shaking. He put them in his pockets so Blackwood would not see. "I have been searching for that bloodline for my whole life," Blackwood continued. "My family lost everything when we lost that horse. But if that foal exists, if she is alive, she would restore everything. She would be worth $500,000, maybe more, to the right person." He folded the photograph and put it back in his jacket. "So I am asking you, old man, have you seen a horse like that? A dark chestnut foal, unusual in some way? Something that moved different? Something that seemed special?" Jed could feel his heart beating in his throat. He could taste copper in his mouth. "No," he said. The word came out like a stone. "I have not seen any horse like that." But Blackwood was looking past him, over his shoulder, toward the barn. Storm was standing in the barn doorway. The young horse had heard the voices and come to see what was happening. The foal stood in the morning light, dark and beautiful and perfect. Blackwood's face changed completely. He got off his horse, so fast that he almost fell. He walked toward the barn with quick steps, his eyes never leaving Storm. "No," he whispered. "No, it cannot be." He stopped about 10 feet from the barn door and just stared. Jed watched him stare. He watched the man's face, watched it change from hope to shock to something like hunger. "That is her," Blackwood said. His voice was shaking now. "That is absolutely her. The bloodline, the coat, the size, the eyes, everything. That is Thunder's blood reborn." He turned back to Jed. Now his smile was different. Now it was the smile of a man who had found treasure. "You own her?" Blackwood asked. "She is mine," Jed said, "How much do you want?" Blackwood asked, "Name your price. I will pay it. Whatever you want. $50,000? $100,000? I will give you anything you ask. Just name it." Jed said nothing. "Do you understand what she is?" Blackwood stepped closer. His voice was tight with excitement. "Do you understand what you have? That horse is worth more money than you could make in 10 lifetimes. That horse is the answer to everything. That horse is the most valuable animal in 3 states. She is not for sale," Jed said quietly. Blackwood's face went red. "You do not understand. That horse belongs to my family. That bloodline is ours. We have papers." He stopped. "Well, we did have papers. They burned. But I have proof. I have photographs. I have documentation. I have experts who will verify the bloodline." "The papers are gone," Jed said. "If there are no papers, there is no proof." "There are ways," Blackwood said. His voice was getting harder now. "DNA tests, blood tests, experts who can verify bloodlines. The courts will help me. If you refuse to sell voluntarily, I will take this to court. I will prove she has stolen property. I will have her taken from you legally." He walked even closer to Jed. His face was inches away now. "You are just an old man with a broken ranch," Blackwood hissed. "You cannot fight me. I have lawyers. I have money. I have connections. You have nothing. If you are smart, you will take my offer. You will take the money and you will let her go." Jed looked back at the barn. Storm was still standing there, dark and perfect in the morning light. He thought about the first day, the wild foal and the auction ring, the animal that nobody wanted, the horse that had learned to trust him. He thought about the months of patience, the silent mornings with coffee, the moment when Storm's nose first touched his hand. He thought about the day in the canyon, how Storm had saved Buck, how Storm had moved with impossible strength and impossible speed. He thought about his wife, Maria, who had been gone for 3 years. He thought about his son, Tommy, who had left and never came back. He thought about how empty everything had been. Then he looked at Storm again. And for the first time since Maria died, Jed Mitchell knew exactly what he needed to do. "No," Jed said simply. "No." Blackwood stepped back. "No what? No, you will not sell? That is crazy. That is—" "No," Jed repeated. "You cannot have her. The papers are gone. There is no proof. She is my horse now." "I will sue you," Blackwood said. His voice was shaking with anger. "I will take everything you have." "You can try," Jed said, "but you will lose, because she is mine. She has been mine since the moment nobody wanted her. She is mine because I loved her when she was broken. You can take that to court. You can bring your lawyers. But a judge will see that she chose to stay with me." Blackwood's face twisted with rage. He walked back to his horse and mounted it violently. "You will regret this," he said. "You are throwing away a fortune. You are choosing poverty and failure when you could have everything." Jed did not answer. He watched Blackwood ride away in angry clouds of dust. He watched the man disappear down the road. He watched until there was nothing left but an empty road and wind and silence. Then Jed walked to the barn. Storm came to meet him, and the young horse put her head on his shoulder. "We are staying together," Jed whispered. "No matter what happens, no matter what anyone offers, we are staying together." Storm breathed out slowly, as if she understood. And in that moment, Jed Mitchell realized something he had forgotten a long time ago. Some things were worth more than money. Some bonds could not be broken by lawyers or offers or threats. Some treasures could not be measured in dollars. They could only be measured in love. Part 5. The real treasure. The months that followed were the strangest of Jed Mitchell's life. Richard Blackwood kept his word. He hired lawyers. He filed papers in court. He sent documents claiming that Storm was stolen property. He claimed that Jed had no right to own the horse. He demanded that a judge force Jed to return the animal to him. The court case was long and painful. Jed spent money he did not have on his own lawyer. He went to the courthouse in town and sat in front of a judge. He told his story. He explained about finding Storm at the auction. He showed the auction papers. He showed the photographs of his grandfather's horse, but he could not prove Storm's bloodline. There were no papers. There was no official documentation. There was only Jed's word. The judge listened carefully. Then she said something that changed everything. "The law requires proof," the judge said, "but I do not see stolen property here. I see a horse that was abandoned and unwanted, a horse that was left at an auction to disappear, a horse that was saved by this man. The law also recognizes ownership through care and bond. This horse came to trust this man. This horse was raised and trained and loved by this man. That is a bond that cannot be broken by papers or lawyers." The judge looked at Blackwood. "You say you want this horse because of bloodline and money," the judge said, "but this old man wants this horse because he loves her. In my court, love is more powerful than gold." She banged her gavel. "The horse stays with Mr. Mitchell." Case dismissed. Jed walked out of that courthouse feeling like he had been given a second life. But something else happened that day, something that Jed did not expect. A man came up to him in the parking lot. The man was tall, with kind eyes and familiar face. "Dad," the man said. Jed turned around and his breath stopped. It was his son, Tommy. "I was in town on business," Tommy said. His voice was shaking. "I heard about the court case. I heard the judge talking to reporters outside. I heard what you said about choosing love over money, about refusing a fortune because of a horse." Tommy stepped closer. "When I left the ranch, I thought you were living the past," Tommy said. "I thought you were stubborn and foolish. I thought money and success meant everything. I thought the city was better than this place. But I was wrong, Dad. I was so wrong." Tears were running down Tommy's face. "I built a life in the city. I made good money. I have a nice house. But I was empty inside, just like you were empty when Mom died. And then I heard what you did. You turned down a fortune. You chose love instead. You chose something that nobody could buy." Tommy reached out and hugged his father. "I want to come home," Tommy said. "I want to help you with the ranch. I want to know that horse. I want to remember what matters." Jed held his son and cried. For the first time in 4 years, they were together again. For the first time in 4 years, Jed was not alone. Things changed quickly after that. Tommy moved back to the ranch with his wife and 2 children, Jed's grandchildren, who he had barely known. They fixed the barn roof. They repaired the fences. They brought the ranch back to life. And they helped Jed train Storm. The young horse grew stronger every day. By the time Storm was 2 years old, she had become something remarkable. Tommy began taking the horse to local races. Neighbors heard about the incredible new horse on Jed's ranch. They came to watch. Storm won every race. Not by much, but enough to turn heads. The horse moved with power and grace that seemed impossible for such a young animal. Racing experts came to watch. They whispered among themselves. They took photographs. They asked questions. "Where did you get this horse?" they asked. "She came to me when she was wild and broken," Jed would say, "but she learned to be strong." But he did something different. He opened the ranch to visitors. People could come and watch Storm run. They could learn about the horse. They could understand that there was more to life than winning and money. Families came. Children sat in the stands and watched Storm race. Adults saw something in that horse that reminded them of hope. Journalists wrote stories about the mysterious horse that had come from nowhere. Radio stations played interviews with Jed about loyalty and redemption. More than that, people began bringing their own broken horses to the ranch. Horses that were wild. Horses that were scared. Horses that nobody wanted. Jed and Tommy helped them all. They taught other ranchers the same patience that Jed had learned. They showed them that broken things could be fixed with time and love. The ranch became a place where damaged horses came to heal. A place where impossible things became possible. Jed's bank account changed. Not because of Blackwood's money, but because the ranch was successful now. Because people respected what Jed and his family were doing. Because love and loyalty were more powerful than any other force. One evening, when Storm was 4 years old, Jed sat on his porch with Tommy. They watched the sunset paint the sky orange and red. Storm stood in the pasture, dark and beautiful in the fading light. "I remember when you bought her," Tommy said. "That day at the auction. I thought you were crazy. I thought you were throwing away money on an impossible horse." "I was," Jed said, "but sometimes crazy is just another word for brave." Tommy smiled. "Mom would have been proud of you, Dad. She always said that love was stronger than anything." Jed nodded. His throat was tight with emotion. "I lost everything," Jed said quietly. "Your mother? You? Hope? I thought my life was over. But then Storm came. And somehow, through that broken foal, I found my way back." He looked at his son. "You came back too," Jed said, "because you saw that I chose love over everything else. You remembered what matters." Tommy reached over and squeezed his father's shoulder. The sun dropped lower. The sky turned purple and blue. Stars began to appear, one by one, like lights coming on in the darkness. Storm came to the fence and waited. Jed stood up and walked over to the horse. He placed his hand on Storm's neck. The dark eyes looked at him with that same intelligence and awareness they had always held. "Thank you," Jed whispered. "Thank you for saving me." Storm breathed out slowly, as if she understood every word. Behind them, Tommy and his wife sat on the porch. Tommy's children played in the barn. The ranch lights came on, golden and warm in the gathering darkness. Everything was whole again, not because of money or fortune or luck, but because one old man had chosen to love a broken horse, because he had been patient when nothing seemed to work, because he had refused to give up even when the world told him to. Sometimes the greatest treasure is not gold or silver. Sometimes it is not a fancy house or expensive things. Sometimes the greatest treasure is standing beside you in the darkness, breathing softly, asking for nothing but love. Jed Mitchell had learned this truth the hard way, but he had learned it, and he would never forget. The silence of the evening wrapped around them all like a blanket. The silence that speaks louder than any words. The silence that says, "You are home. You are loved. You are never alone again." The end.